we want
Sure.
to bring in Ahmed Abofoul,
Yes,
who
sure.
is an international lawyer. He works with the Palestinian human rights group 𝐓𝐡𝐞. And we learned just before the show that you two are actually neighbors in Gaza, your families, and that proves our theory now that has been proven over the last few months that literally everyone in Gaza knows everyone else, which of course amplifies and magnifies the horror and the tragedy because so many people are losing friends and family. So, Ahmed, we're so happy to have you back. And we had you back, we had you on a few weeks ago. We're going to get into some questions for you and for Haidar about the proceedings. But before that, let's just show these two very short clips from the proceedings. We're going to start with just a few seconds of Blinne Nechroli, the Irish barrister who was part of the South African team. So let's just take a look at that.
The international community continues to fail the Palestinian people, despite the overt, dehumanizing, genocidal rhetoric by Israeli governmental and military officials, matched by the Israeli army's actions on the ground. Despite the horror of the genocide against the Palestinian people being live-streamed from Gaza to our mobile phones, computers, and television screens, the first genocide in history where its victims are broadcasting their own destruction in real time in the desperate, so far vain hope that the world might do something.
Yeah, and of course, for those of us who watched the whole presentation, it was just an incredibly powerful and well put together presentation. But I'm going to ask both of you, but starting with you, Ahmed, as an international lawyer, what was your impression of the proceedings? And yeah, what did you see last week?
First of all, thank you for having me, Ali, and thank you for the Electronic Intifada for the important journalistic work that you do in the age of complicity of certain media outlets around the world. And they're not only complicity in genocide, I think also rationalization of the crimes committed against the Palestinians. I'm happy to see that Haidar is okay now. And if you allow me a little bit before I answer your question. When he was speaking, I couldn't help it but seeing images. Every place he mentioned, I know. I spent my whole life there. We literally were 2 houses away. We were in the same neighborhood. His brother was my English teacher. I owe him a lot that I am able to speak English, and the whole family actually was an important family in the neighborhood. I mean, Haider himself, a lot of young people owe him a lot. He's a great professor, and he taught a lot, like 𝐓𝐡𝐞, who has left an impression on all of us and so many people. So I felt I needed to say that for the people.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And answering your question, I think the presentation of South Africa was emotional for all of us as Palestinians. And the reason to that is that for the first time, although it wasn't Palestinians who were speaking, they were speaking in Palestinian language, Palestinian analysis, Palestinian narration. And for the first time, we could hear our own narrative being presented at the International Court of Justice. And if you allow me, something important to note here in such cases, of course, this is a court of law, but this is also a court of public opinion. For the first time, the world has seen the South African argument representing what the Palestinians have been narrating for decades, and the Israeli arguments, how Israel is justifying, so to say, its atrocities. And it was very, very emotional to watch this. I think they have, legally speaking now, I think they have a very good case. It was a very well argued, well structured, and I think you don't need to be a lawyer to watch the pleading and see that. I think the importance of this case is not only from a legal perspective. I think also public opinion. The word Israel for what it is. In a way, the mask is off, not only from Israel, also its allies. They can no longer claim that this is quote unquote the only democracy in the Middle East, nor can they claim to be the protectors of human rights, because evidently they don't care about human rights unless it's politically convenient to use it against their foes, but not against their allies. Um, on the arguments themselves, I think South Africa provided a very strong case, providing the court for what it needs for this particular procedure. Now we're talking about provisional measures. The court does not need to rule on the merits. All is needed from the court is to decide that there's jurisdiction prima facie. So at first glance, meaning that the court is probably would have jurisdiction on the matter, that there are serious allegations of genocide, and South Africa provided a very good case. The question remains which of the provisional measures the court would rule on, and I think there is room of legal arguments. The court might not rule on all provisional measures, but in my opinion, most of these provisional measures are, if I can describe them this way, a low-hanging fruit. So, for example, the allowing humanitarian aid is something that is not controversial. Preservation of evidence or allowing investigative bodies, that is something the court would most probably rule on. Perhaps the only matter that the court will have to look into a little bit deeper is the cessation of hostilities. And there, Israel used an argument. I wouldn't be naive to say that the Israeli case was very weak. I agree it appeared weak for the public, but there was certain arguments that the court might have to stop and contemplate. I'm not saying that these arguments are necessarily winning, but they might tone down what the court orders, in particular in relation to the cessation of hostilities. So the court might in a way adjust this demand or order it differently or not order it at all. But what's interesting, Ali, that Israel used an argument that it's always using, and that is the body of law called international humanitarian law. This body of law is a body of international law that governs armed conflicts, so governs occupation, a situation that was not supposed to last that long, was supposed to be temporarily, and this is not new. Israel has for long used the rules of international humanitarian law to justify its violations, because this body of law, by virtue, provide for the occupying power to treat its population and the population of the occupied territory differently. It has used this to justify its apartheid, but again, these rules were not intended for a situation that long. Here, Israel argued that because it's conducting a military operation against the Palestinian resistance, and this is in the context of an armed conflict, it does not necessarily mean that there is genocide. Although I don't think this argument holds a solid ground, simply because they're not mutually exclusive. You can have yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So as I understand it, at this point, the South Africans don't have to prove that there is genocide. They just have to prove that there is a plausible case that there could be genocide, so that the court would impose these so-called provisional measures, which is like an injunction saying freeze things where they are until we decide the case. That might take years. But nonetheless, the South Africans did, and of course, key to the crime of genocide is intent. That genocide is not just acts like killing and murder and maiming and expelling and so on, but with the intent to destroy people in whole or in part. The South Africans did nonetheless lay out a case that Israel intends genocide. And we have a very short clip of one of the South African barristers, Thembeka Ungukatobi, who
Minimum.
is making that case. Let's take a quick look at this short clip and get your views on it.
Genocide have repeatedly called for Gaza to be wiped out, flattened, erased, and crushed on all its inhabitants. They have deplored anyone feeling sorry for the uninvolved Gazans, asserting repeatedly that there are no uninvolved, that there are no innocents in Gaza, that the killers of the women and children should not be separated from the citizens of Gaza, and that the children of Gaza have brought this upon themselves, and that there should be one sentence for everyone there, death. Finally, the lawmakers have called for mercilessly bombing from the air, with some advocating for the use of nuclear doomsday weapons, and a Nakba that will overshadow the Nakba of '48. The Prime Minister's genocidal speech has gained ground among some elements of civil society. A famous singer has repeated Mr. Netanyahu's Amalek reference, stating that Gaza must be wiped out and be destroyed with.
So actually, let me ask you, Haidar, because you are in Gaza, how the experience you described for us a short time ago matches very precisely what the Israelis said they intended for Gaza, particularly the horrifying impact on your children and all children in Gaza. Do you see in the description that we just heard from Tembeka the what Israeli leaders wanted? Did that match the reality in Gaza?
Oh, you're muted, Haidar. Oh. There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry about that. Look, Ali, I've read the document, excellent 84-page document, written by the top legal minds here in South Africa, supported by some Palestinians, by the way. And I think, again, going back to the context, the unprecedented number of war crimes, crimes against humanity, etc., that went by, unpunished with full impunity, has definitely affected the credibility of international law in the eyes of the Palestinians in general, and the eyes of the Gazans in particular. And I think I strongly believe, the moment I heard about the case, that what would be at stake is not only Gaza, it's the future of global justice. This is a defining moment in the history of humanity. Some people think that I'm exaggerating. Some people don't like what I'm saying. But look, 3 months, constant bombing, airstrikes, shelling, etc., killing 1.5 to 2% of an entire population. That's a genocide, and somebody has to say something. We were waiting for our Arab brothers, for our Muslim brothers to do something. That hasn't happened. And I think what South Africa did came to our ears. It came like music to our ears. This is the first time a country manages to cross the red line, as I said. And that red line is that you are taking Israel to the ICJ, accusing it of, committing a genocide. Now, that means you are taking the entire West. That means you are trying a history of colonialism. That means you are putting the United States of America and imperialism on trial. And this is why the colonial West is not happy. As for the Palestinians of Gaza, to answer your question, Ali, and I can tell you, at the beginning, I think, having conversations with relatives and families, and at the beginning, they didn't get it. How many times Do we have, to take Israel to... They didn't differentiate, for example, between the ICC and ICJ, but with the proceedings and hearing the defense using the Palestinian narrative, the Minister of Justice said we have to go back to what happened in 1948 in order to understand what is happening now. And I tell you, every single Palestinian I know is extremely happy with what is happening. And one other reason is, the joint struggle against apartheid Israel, apartheid South Africa. But also we need to clarify, because I have been mentioning the word apartheid, and apartheid is only one form of oppression used by apartheid Israel against the Palestinians. Israel is using a multi-tiered system of oppression. I remember against Palestinians. I remember when we met Desmond Tutu and my friend comrade here, Ronnie Castles here, both of them actually told me what you are going through and that was before the genocide, by the way, before the current genocide. What you are witnessing in Palestine is far, far worse than what we had to deal with, under apartheid, in the heydays of apartheid. South Africans talked about, the 4 pillars of the struggle. The most important pillar of the struggle at the end of the 80s for them was international solidarity. And this is what we are saying. We Palestinians, especially Gazans now under the bombardment of apartheid Israel, we want, those sentiments of international solidarity to be translated into actions. And we believe that South Africa has begun that process.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's if I can, I think that's a key point. When I watched it, I'm also skeptical of these things because we've been disappointed so many times. But the power of it and the fact that the world was watching was really, I think, galvanizing and took our struggle in the international arena to another level. Ahmed, I have a question for you. But first, let's take a look at these 2 very short clips. They're very short, I promise, from the Israeli presentation. The first one, they're both of Tal Becker, who is an Israeli official who was one of the Israeli team. Let's go to that first clip.
Can I just pop in here for a moment? I don't feel like listening to the Israeli presentation, Ali.
Okay,
okay?
That's fine. It was a very short.
I really don't feel like that. Unless you wanted to listen to Hitler, you wanted to listen to the racist of the American South. I really don't think we need to give them a platform. I'm sure you understand my point.
We'll skip it. That's fine.
We know what they said. Yeah.
you know what they said. It was
exactly.
It was tough to watch. We'll skip it. But let me ask you, Ahmed. You already addressed one of the questions I had for you, which is what might the court do? So what I heard from you, I think, is that it's not necessarily a slam dunk. They might not necessarily agree to everything South Africa asked for, and we shouldn't underestimate the effect of some of the Israeli arguments, even though the presentation was largely garbage. We'll save that discussion for now. And by the way, full of many of the lies that we have debunked, including about children being tied up and burned and mass rapes and the other lies you've talked about. What I want to ask you, Ahmed, and this relates to what you said, Haidar, about the colonial West, but there are some third countries that are intervening shamelessly on the side of Israel, most notably Germany, intervening on behalf of a party accused of genocide. I want to get your reaction to that, Ahmed, and also what impact do you think that might have on the case? Should we be worried about Germany's intervention?
No, I don't think, to be honest, not at all. But if you allow me, before answering your question, I will answer it. I think it's a very good question. And it's important to note, although like the genocidal statements are very apparent in this case and very important, South Africa's case, first and foremost, relied on the ways in which Israel is conducting the military operation, then the genocidal statements. So the first argument is actually on the ways in which Israel is conducting the military operation and how these genocidal statements have been trickled down and translated into actions on the ground, and how the soldiers have received this instructions and implemented it. So I just wanted to clarify this point. South Africa anticipated very well the Israeli arguments. I think it wasn't hard for them to anticipate that, and they addressed it beforehand. On Germany's intervention, I don't think we need to be very worried. The only party that needs to be worried is Germany itself, if about its reputation, if there is any left of it, to be honest. Because if this action is showing us, while South Africa is learning from history and teaching, schooling the whole world, especially the West, on what true leadership is like, Germany is proving once again that it never learns from its shameful history. And I see no appropriate response better than that of the presidency of Namibia, scolding Germany, telling them you're in no place to make such a statement. But if you allow me, even from a legal perspective, Germany intervened in many cases, saying the exact opposite of what it would say about genocide in Israel, including in Myanmar. There are specific arguments that Germany has put forward that cannot walk back. The court would look at these arguments and look at what Germany would have to do. I understand that this is politically motivated. This is what the political leaders want, but I feel sorry for German lawyers who would want to work on this, because it will be an impossible mission or a very difficult job to come up with new arguments that you craft them only to serve the purpose, in this case, in support of Israel, where you said the exact opposite in other situations. So I think the court might even, and the court can do that, might tell Germany that we won't accept your intervention at all. You presented your views on genocide in other cases, and you don't need to make them in every case. You told us your interpretation of the law. Thank you, set aside. It's also a possibility. Or Germany might be allowed to intervene, and it won't have any value, and we have a precedent to that. Germany intervened in the proceeding on the scope of the International Criminal Court's territorial jurisdiction, saying that Palestine is not a state and doesn't qualify as a state for the purposes of the Rome Statute. And to be honest, made a fool of themselves. It was a political submission. It didn't have, in my view, any legal arguments, and it was set aside. It was of no value whatsoever. I think this is a record of history showing us that Germany haven't learned a thing of its shameful history, and it should know better. It should look to the global south, to the true leadership in South Africa, in Namibia, and other states, and it should address its shameful past and its atrocities against African people, especially in Namibia, before it dares to speak about genocide. The history of the colonial West as a whole is that of genocide. Genocide is inherent in Western settler colonial ideologies.
Yeah. Ahmed, I know you have to go, so we'll let you go. Also, Haidar, both of you, we'd love to have you back on as soon as possible. There's so much more to talk about in terms of South Africa's historic role at the ICJ hearings and the implications, for Palestinians and for people under the thumb of Western imperialist oppression in general. So Ahmed, you're an international legal expert at 𝐓𝐡𝐞. Haidar, you are a writer, scholar, educator, and comrade of ours. Thank you both so much for being with us on the Electronic
Thank you
Intifada
both so
live
much,
stream.
Haidar. We're so happy to see you, and I look forward to seeing you in the flesh soon, inshallah, somewhere soon.
Inshallah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nora. Thank you, Ali, and thank you, Ahmed. Thank you.
Thank you. It was good seeing you, Haidar.
Shukran. Bye.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit like, leave a comment. These engagements help us with the YouTube algorithm, and it helps us to get around Silicon Valley censorship as much as possible. It does make a difference. You can also support our journalism by going to electronicintifada.net and clicking on donate now. Thank you.